Listeners, the background of this story is the largest human migration in history, a result of the partition of the Indian subcontinent in 1947. During this migration, millions of people were forced to permanently move from India to Pakistan and from Pakistan to India. As a consequence, people on both sides became victims of psychological, social, economic, and emotional turmoil. Now let's listen to a tragedy from that time. A few years after the partition, the governments of Pakistan and India came up with an idea. Just like the exchange of civilian prisoners, there should also be an exchange of lunatics. This meant that Muslim lunatics confined in Indian asylums would be sent to Pakistan, while Hindu and Sikh lunatics in Pakistani asylums would be handed over to India. Whether this idea was rational or irrational, no one could say for sure. Nevertheless, after much deliberation by the wise and the powerful, high-level conferences were held on both sides, and eventually a date was set for the exchange of lunatics. A thorough screening process took place. Those Muslim lunatics who had relatives still living in India were allowed to stay there. The rest were transported to the border. Since nearly all Hindus and Sikhs had already left Pakistan, there was no question of keeping anyone back. Every last Hindu and Sikh lunatic was escorted to the border under police supervision. What happened on the other side was unknown, but here at the Lahore asylum, the news of this exchange stirred up great excitement and speculation. A Muslim lunatic, who had been reading the newspaper religiously every day for the past 12 years, was asked by a fellow inmate, "Maulvi Sahib, what exactly is Pakistan?" After deep contemplation, he replied, "It's a place in India where razors are made." Satisfied with this answer, his friend nodded. Similarly, a Sikh lunatic asked another Sikh inmate, "Sardarji, why are they sending us to India? We don't even speak their language." The other one smiled. "I know the language of the Hindu stories. The Indians are cunning, always strutting around with arrogance." One day while taking a bath, a Muslim lunatic shouted, "Long live Pakistan!" with such enthusiasm that he slipped on the wet floor and lost consciousness. Some of the inmates weren't actually insane. Most of them were murderers whose families had bribed officials to have them admitted into the asylum, saving them from the gallows. These men had some understanding of why India was divided and what Pakistan was, but they remained unaware of the actual events. Newspapers were of no help, and the guards were illiterate and ignorant, so their conversations provided no useful information. All they knew was that there was a man named Muhammad Ali Jinnah, whom people referred to as the George Washington of Pakistan. He had created a separate country for Muslims, called Pakistan. Where was this country? What was its exact location? They had no idea. This was why all the inmates, those whose minds were not entirely deranged, were trapped in a strange dilemma. Were they in Pakistan or India? If they were in India, then where was Pakistan? And if they were in Pakistan, how was it possible that they had been living in the same place when it was once part of India? One lunatic became so entangled in the confusion of Pakistan and India that he lost his sanity completely. One day while sweeping, he climbed up a tree, perched on a branch, and for 2 straight hours delivered a speech on the complex issue of Pakistan and India. When the guards ordered him to come down, he climbed even higher. When they tried to scare him, he shouted, "I don't want to live in India or Pakistan. I'll stay on this tree." After much difficulty, when his episode finally subsided, he climbed down. Then, overwhelmed with sorrow, he embraced his Hindu and Sikh friends and wept. The thought that they would soon leave him behind and go to India broke his heart. There was a Muslim radio engineer with an MSc degree who kept himself isolated from the other lunatics. He spent his days silently pacing along a specific path in the garden. But then, one day, something changed. He took off all his clothes, handed them to the warden, and began walking around the garden, stark naked. A fat Muslim lunatic from Chiniot, who had once been an active worker of the Muslim League and used to bathe 15 or 16 times a day, suddenly abandoned the habit. His name was Muhammad Ali. One day, standing behind his enclosure, he declared that he was none other than George Washington of Pakistan, Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Seeing him, a Sikh lunatic proclaimed himself Master Tara Singh. It almost led to bloodshed inside the enclosure, but before the situation escalated, both were declared dangerously insane and locked up separately. There was a young Hindu lawyer from Lahore who had lost his mind after a failed love affair. When he learned that Amritsar had become part of India, he was devastated. He had fallen in love with a Hindu girl from that city. She had rejected him, but even in his madness, he had never been able to forget her. So in his fits of rage, he cursed all the Hindu and Muslim leaders who had conspired to divide India into two. His beloved had become Indian, and he had become Pakistani. When talk of the exchange began, many lunatics tried to console him, assuring him that he would be sent to India, to the very land where his beloved lived. but he refused to leave Lahore, believing that he wouldn't be able to build a legal practice in Amritsar. Meanwhile, in the European ward, the Anglo-Indian lunatics were in distress. Upon hearing that the British had left after granting independence to India, they were deeply shaken. They would huddle in secret meetings discussing their uncertain future within the asylum. Would the European ward still exist, or would it be dismantled? Would they still get their breakfast, or would they now be forced to swallow that bloody Indian chapati instead of bread? There was a Sikh inmate who had been in the asylum for 15 years. Strange and nonsensical words constantly flowed from his lips. Upar di Gurgur, di Annex di Bediana, di Mung di Dal of di Lantern. He neither slept during the day nor at night. The guards claimed that in the long span of 15 years, he had never closed his eyes for even a moment. He never lay down, though sometimes he would lean against a wall for support. From standing constantly, his feet had swollen and his calves had thickened. But despite this physical pain, he never lay down to rest. Whenever the inmates discussed India, Pakistan, and the exchange of lunatics, he would listen attentively. If someone asked for his opinion, he would respond with great seriousness. Upar di Gurgur, di Annex di Bediana, di Mung di Wall of the Pakistan government. Later, he replaced Pakistan government with Toba Tek Singh government and began asking the other lunatics where Toba Tek Singh was, the place he belonged to. But no one knew whether it was in Pakistan or India. Those who attempted to explain would soon find themselves caught in the same confusion. After all, wasn't Sialkot once in India, but now in Pakistan? And who knew if Lahore, which was currently in Pakistan, might end up in India tomorrow? Or what if the entire India became Pakistan? And who could say with certainty that one day, both India and Pakistan wouldn't just disappear altogether? The Sikh lunatic's hair had thinned over the years, and he now had only a sparse, scraggly mane left. Since he rarely bathed, his beard and hair had become matted together, making his appearance eerily unkempt. Yet he was harmless. In 15 years, he had never once fought with anyone. The older staff members of the asylum knew that he once owned vast lands in Toba Tek Singh. He had been a well-to-do landowner, living a prosperous life until one day, his mind suddenly snapped. His family had brought him to the asylum, bound in thick iron chains, and admitted him there. For years, they would visit once a month to check on him before leaving again. This continued for a long time, but when the chaos of partition erupted between Pakistan and India, their visits stopped. His real name was Bishan Singh, but everyone in the asylum called him Toba Tek Singh. He had no concept of days, months, or how many years had passed. But every month, when his relatives were supposed to visit, he somehow instinctively knew. On those days, he would tell the warden that his visitors were coming. On that day, he would bathe properly, scrub his body with soap, oil his hair, and neatly comb it. He would even put on the clothes that he never otherwise wore, and then go to meet them, looking well-dressed. When his family spoke to him, he would either remain silent or occasionally mutter, Upar di Gurgur di Annex di Bediana, di Mungdiwal of di Lantern. He had a daughter. Over the years, she had grown, an inch taller each month, until in 15 years, she had become a young woman. But Bishan Singh never recognized her. As a child, she used to cry whenever she saw her father. Now, as a grown woman, she still wept every time she looked at him. Listeners, if you are enjoying the story, like this video and subscribe to Usama's Narrations for more timeless masterpieces that you won't want to miss. When the issue of Pakistan and India arose, he began asking other lunatics where Toba Tek Singh was. When he couldn't get a satisfactory answer, his curiosity grew day by day. His visitors had also stopped coming. Previously, he would somehow know when they were about to visit, but now, even that inner voice had gone silent, the one that used to inform him of their arrival. He desperately wanted those people to come, the ones who showed him sympathy, brought him fruits, sweets, and clothes. If they came, he could ask them where Toba Tek Singh was. They would surely tell him whether it was in Pakistan or India, because he believed they came from Toba Tek Singh, where his lands were. There was a lunatic in the asylum who claimed to be God. One day, Bishan Singh asked him whether Toba Tek Singh was in Pakistan or India. As usual, he laughed and said, "It is neither in Pakistan nor in India, because we haven't given the order yet." Bishan Singh repeatedly pleaded with this God to give the orders so that this confusion could be resolved, but he was too busy issuing other orders. One day, frustrated, Bishan Singh lashed out at him. Upar di Gurgur, di Annex di Bediana, di Mung di Dal of Waheguru ji da Khalsa, and Waheguru ji di Fateh, Jubole Sonihal, Sat Shri Akal. Perhaps what he meant was that this lunatic was the god of Muslims. If he had been the god of Sikhs, he would have listened to him. A few days before the exchange, a Muslim from Toba Tek Singh, who was a friend of Bishan Singh, came to visit. He had never visited before. When Bishan Singh saw him, he stepped aside and started to walk away. But the guard stopped him. "He has come to see you. He is your friend, Fazal Din." Bishan Singh looked at Fazal Din for a moment and mumbled something. Fazal Din stepped forward and placed a hand on his shoulder. "I've been thinking about visiting you for a long time, but I just couldn't find the time. Your family has safely moved to India. I helped them as much as I could. Your daughter, Roop Kaur." He hesitated. Bishan Singh seemed to be trying to remember. "Your daughter, Roop Kaur," Fazal Din repeated slowly. "Yes, she is fine. She left with the rest of them." Bishan Singh remained silent. Fazal Din continued. "They told me to keep checking on you. Now I've heard you are going to India. Give my regards to Brother Balbir Singh and Brother Wadawa Singh and Sister Amrit Kaur too. Tell Brother Balbir that Fazal Din is well. The 2 buffaloes he left behind, one gave birth to a calf, the other had a female calf, but she died after 6 days. And if you ever need anything, just let me know. I'm always here for you. I brought some sweets for you." Bishan Singh took the bundle of sweets and handed it over to the guard standing beside him. Then he asked Fazal Din, "Where is Toba Tek Singh?" Fazal Din was slightly taken aback. "Where is it? It's where it always was." Bishan Singh asked again, "In Pakistan or India?" "In India." No, in Pakistan." Fazal Din was flustered. Bishan Singh muttered as he walked away. "Upar di Gurgur di Annex di Bediana, di Mung di Dal of Pakistan, and Hindustan of di Drafate Mu." The preparations for the exchange were complete. The lists of lunatics to be transferred from both sides had been finalized, and the exchange date had been set. It was bitterly cold when trucks loaded with Hindu and Sikh lunatics left Lahore's asylum under police escort. The officials in charge accompanied them. At the Wagah border, the superintendents from both sides met, and after completing the initial formalities, the exchange process began. It continued throughout the night. Transporting the lunatics from the trucks and handing them over to the other officers was a difficult task. Some refused to come out, while those who agreed were hard to control as they tried to run in different directions. Those who were naked were given clothes, but they tore them off their bodies. Some were shouting curses and some were singing. They were fighting amongst themselves, crying, wailing. The noise was deafening. The screams of the lunatic women added to the chaos, and the cold was so bitter that everyone's teeth were chattering. Most of the lunatics were against this exchange because they couldn't understand why they were being uprooted and sent somewhere else. Those who could comprehend something were shouting, "Long live Pakistan!" and "Death to Pakistan!" Several times fights nearly broke out because both Muslim and Sikh lunatics got enraged upon hearing these slogans. When Bishan Singh's turn came, and the officer on the other side of Wagah started recording his name in the register, he asked, "Where is Toba Tek Singh? In Pakistan or in India?" The officer laughed. "In Pakistan." Upon hearing this, Bishan Singh leaped to the side and ran back to his remaining companions. The Pakistani soldiers caught him and tried to drag him to the other side, but he refused to move. "Toba Tek Singh is here," he shouted at the top of his lungs. "Upar di Gurgur di Annex di Bediana, di Mung di Dal of Toba Tek Singh in Pakistan." They tried to convince him that Toba Tek Singh was now in India, and if it wasn't, it would be sent there soon. But he would not listen. When they forcibly tried to take him across, he stood firmly in the middle of the border on his swollen legs, as if no power on earth could move him from that spot. Since he was harmless, they didn't use force and let him stay there while the rest of the exchange continued. So listeners, Bishan Singh's madness symbolizes the fate of countless people who lost their homes, and he dies in a place that belongs to neither India nor Pakistan, reinforcing the senselessness of the whole event. Comment down below. What do you understand from this story?